Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in after the round of 32. This week, I'm here with Dylan, our driver. In the first half of this week's video, Aaron is going to be taking us through Tantrum's fight against Gigabyte, and then we'll be answering some Instagram questions. Follow us on @SeemsReasonable if you don't. And in the second half of the video, we'll then shift and talk with Aaron a little bit about Blip's fight against Valkyrie and some questions again we have for Blip. So make sure you stay tuned in the second half for that. So Aaron, go ahead and take it away.
All right. First of all, I'm going to do some intro of Dylan here. I went to high school with this guy. We've been driving robots against each other for a while. And last year, somebody gave me a compliment after Savle's fight of, "Oh, you're one of the best drivers." And I turned to Dylan and went, "How's it feel to be slightly better than one of the best drivers?"
To
So
be fair, we've driven robots together a lot, not against each other a lot.
been driving robots for a while. So it's from my perspective, it's been nice this season watching Tantrum out there not skipping a beat on the, been driving awesome. So Dylan, you want to intro yourself at all?
Yeah. So like Aaron said, grew up, 2 minutes away from him. We went to the same high school. We're on the same robotics team in high school. I actually got my job out here in California because Aaron told me to send a resume after he got his job here. So then once I moved out here around right before season 4, I joined the team as well, and have been part of manufacturing and design team mostly. And then I started doing the auxiliary driving. And this year, now that we have 2 robots, I've taken over driving the drive base for Tantrum.
Alrighty, and then I don't know which one of you three pre-fight stuff for Gigabyte. How early did you know they're going to be running the wedge setup? And what do you think about it? Let's go, Alex.
I think we knew that pretty early. I'm trying to remember. And I think that they told us they were thinking about running it, or at least they alluded to it, thinking that it would psych us out. But it was like more of like we'll see what happens. Like at that point, like it's there or it's not, and that doesn't really change anything for us. If anything, actually, it not being there, or sorry, it being there meant that their mini bots would not be there because they don't have to wait for the mini bots. And I do remember thinking, ooh, I'd rather take a wedge than a mini bot. So.
And we did get to see it in the battery tent before the fight. So,
yeah.
Or at least we saw there was an attachment covered in cardboard.
Yeah.
What could that be?
I'd seen them use it before at King of Bots in China, so it's like we had some idea what it was. So, alrighty, and then early on in the show motion part, that thing had an issue. But what else happened before this match?
So there was a false start. I thought that was interesting that there's only I think been 2 major false starts this season, and this is one of them, in that the lights were going out and Gigabyte had started spinning up prior to the green light, and we're staring at Tantrum. We're not staring at Gigabyte. We're just looking at the clock and we're looking at our robot. And so when the light went green, we drove forward, and we didn't know that they whack-a-moles, there's the round cylinders that come out of the ground, popped up, and we were at that point going full speed and hit the first one, and it bent our wedge, our anti-horizontal wedge. And so at that point, we were in a bit of a predicament. We didn't want to delay the show because that is bad in general, right? The show must go on, but at the same time, we were effectively damaged on the onset from something that was not in our control. And so we were trying to figure out like what our options are briefly. And again, you have hundreds of eyes watching you at that point, right? Every minute you're taking away at the production budget. And so we did make the decision at the time to just go on, and see how that would go. Because we felt pretty confident still, like, oh, it'll still be able to block their hits with the wedge bent up. But hindsight 2020, that made our driving very.
It looked a lot like Blips.
Looked a lot like Blips.
Sliding all over the place.
Right. And so Dylan, if you wanna talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So after the false start got called, I drove back to the square relatively slowly, not in a hurry because the fight's not happening. Didn't realize that the beak was also actually stuck down slightly and taking some, if not all of the weight off of the front tires at that time. So you can see in the fight and actual fight, when we go to drive around their wedge and turn sideways, normally Tantrum would easily make that turn. But between the wheels and the magnets also being even further off the ground, there was just not a lot of grip, and it just slid sideways straight into the screws. And so I didn't know that that was happening at the time. And then you can watch for the next minute or two, it just over spinning, hitting walls, etc. Of me trying to get the bearings on how to drive this thing, as a two-wheel drive for the first time ever. So
Yeah, so that that's a funky one. That, and it did appear that the front wedge got you a time or two from them. But yeah,
Right. In my interview, as I said, right, his wedge worked until it fell off intentionally, right? So per design, they want it to come off. But we were losing to their wedge, and we're not really used to that, especially when fighting a full shell spinner. Yeah.
And along with that wedge, something that didn't get touched on as much is they had fins they added that pointed out at about 45 degrees. So driving up that wedge while they're spinning up at like full speed would be super dangerous for them hitting the bottom of our robot. So
yeah, props to them for trying something new.
I think they should. I think that they should keep doing it. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I think they should
totally
keep.
should.
Yeah, I think that is the evolution for full shell spinners, is to figure out the wedge game in their own special way. I think it'll be exciting to see what they come up with. So
Alrighty. So the next things, I'm gonna say what the biggest hit we've ever been a part of happened. And for the record, Dylan was my operator last year telling me not to drive into gyro ring fusion, and then I did it anyway. So in this case, that same brilliant mind is the one who decided I'm gonna catch a Gigabyte.
Oh yeah.
So Dylan, why did you decide to catch Gigabyte?
So again, let's go back a couple, a little bit before that hit. We took one relatively big hit from them, and then we pinned them in the corner, spun up to full speed, and the punch wasn't working. And going off that assumption that the punch wasn't going to work for the rest of the fight and it was stuck at the back of the rail, I was trying to figure out how we could do damage to them, because I was struggling to get them up over the top of our ears that we added this year to where I could actually hit them with the weapon at the back. They kind of accidentally, I pushed them up onto the shelf. They started spinning up, and I saw that as an opportunity, and right or wrong, probably wrong, made the decision, if I can get all the way underneath them before they come off, I can hit them with our weapon. And at that point, they had already hit us at least once. They were probably going to hit us more. We needed damage points. The weapon was stuck back, and in that split decision, I was like, let's go. Didn't quite get underneath them all the way though. And it's a big
Right,
hit.
wrong, or awesome?
Yeah.
And awesome happened.
Exactly.
Alrighty, and then one of the next ones here is how bad was it? How bad was the damage after that fight?
Yeah, so I think we have some pictures as well of the aftermath, or also just sort of during the Gigabyte explosion when we ran into them. You can see Chris here and how high Gigabyte is flying. Pretty crazy. But the damage was, it was a lot. It is like nothing I've ever seen. It was quite shocking when we took Tantrum out of the box, and there were like huge gashes in the armor, and not just one, but multiple. So we have some really awesome pictures here taken by our team photographer, Steve. Shout out to Steve for always capturing these in really good detail. But you can see here, I believe this is the one from the upper deck, where they just took that, like a whole chunk of our ear out. They went whoosh, just wiped it out.
5/16 AR-400 for anybody at home.
Yeah, like a literal end mill flying through the air, just cutting into the metal. It was crazy. And you can see here's another angle, and that's like just the size of their tooth on their armor, just whoosh, taking a nice bite from this armor here.
And I think where we don't see this type of damage to Tantrum, not only is it that we built it like a brick, but we usually die from internal damage prior to getting to this point. And so it's really exciting to see that we strengthened up the internals and made it to this point. We didn't manage to take one hit, but we at least took two of these huge hits. So
Yeah, and you can see
There's
here,
three.
it wasn't even just that super upper deck moment. I think just even in general, Gigabyte was able to deliver so much energy into our armor. You can see here at the bottom as well, that's a huge gash with a little band-aid for Tantrum.
And one other thing that makes this different from a lot of hits we've taken is Gigabyte is set up a lot more as a cutting weapon than a lot of horizontal weapons we fought before. So that's why we've never really seen anyone just punch a hole all the way through the armor. They've dented it, but this is crazy.
right.
Yeah, and we also actually lost a wheel, as seen in this, a back wheel. So that was quite fun. Dylan, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so when they came off the deck, this wheel came off. I believe that it might have been slightly damaged from the first hit as well, but that hit took it all the way off. And this is the rubber separating from its hub.
No, this is so our wheels are actually usually a press onto that steel sleeve you see. In addition to some Loctite retaining compound, which works for robot people. And in this case, the wheels this year weren't coming in quite as small as last year. So we're having some issues on the press side of stuff. So, but that usually is a friction and retaining compound fit. But this year, most of the between Blip and Tantrum, it's all, I'm gonna say, retaining compound fits, which is good up to a point, but then you start taking hits as big as you're taking that fight. And
Right, and the wheel flew off in the dive bomb attack, but it is actually already detached from one of the first two hits that we took. And so you can kind of see it wedged against our armor, and so it was an interesting point to see as you're like slow mowing through it and notice like where did this actually fail and figure out like what happened. And yeah, it's just hit and side load going into it weird. So
then the other thing is, well, there's been some people going, "Oh, you should have got counted out." Blah blah blah. Blah. It's like, okay, towards the end of the match, what was our situation?
Yeah, so we after that hit, we were able to drive around fine. Some people said we were driving poorly for a long time. It was not crab walking hardly at all. And then at the very end, it does start to get really bad. We had thought that was because the front left wheel was also getting worn down due to the self-rider lowering into it. It might have also just been slightly high centered on the magnet on something. It's hard to say for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely some case of saved by the bell, at least as far as out.
I think we were saved by the bell. I think that if Gigabyte didn't touch us and the match continued for another 30 seconds, then we probably would have lost. We would have been KO'd. But
yeah,
I mean,
I do remember. I think towards the end, when the 10 seconds was coming on, the ref was asking us to show movement, maybe. And I believe after the match ended, we were able to drive back to the box or to the door. And so we were sort of like, we made it back. Like,
limped back.
You know, we're back.
Yeah, the 5 feet to the door from where the match ended.
Yeah.
Still back.
Right. And it's interesting how the crab walking rules are enforced and how that's going this season. So, but yeah, I think we were saved by the bell. I'll just leave it at that.
Awesome. And so in terms of fixing Tantrum and going into the round of 16 later this week, we'll talk a little bit about how we feel going into the round of 16 as we look to face Rotator and Blip looks to face Jackpot. Thank you. Sorry, there are a lot of matches.
It's been a while.
Yes, it has been. And so tune in, subscribe for that. But just for now, this is just a picture I really enjoyed that our team photographer took of sort of the state of Tantrum after every match. I would say that maybe generously 80% of the time Tantrum was in this state in the pits. Everything comes out. It's very densely packed. Everything is tightly packaged and designed. And so if you want to work on anything, pretty much this is what's going on. If you walk by, you will see this. But Tantrum is still very cute in this state. So anyhow, I liked this picture. So, all right, cool. So,
alrighty, and then I've got a few other questions from some Instagram stuff we put up. And then if you're not following us there, that seems that reasonable. Why is Tantrum too angry to die?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes into iteration. I think initial revisions of Tantrum did die with love. So I think we took a lot of that learning. It's hard to get box time, like for a robot to, for a team that's never built a combat robot, to build one that doesn't die on the first, impact in the battle box is an incredible accomplishment. It's very difficult. So we took learnings from the past 3 years is really what it is. And we're able to apply that towards what we've done. So every time after a fight, we, go through the engineering process, look at what went wrong, how do we fix it in the future, and how do we prevent it from happening again? And I think just that over and over and over again, and really that dedication and that level of detail is what helps it not break.
I think he's also kind of like the orange version of the Hulk. The angrier he gets,
Okay.
the more unstoppable he is. So
Yeah, I think it's about attitude, really. Tantrum's eyes.
just look at him.
All right, and this one's for Alex. Why has Tantrum never worn its bracers? It's big arm guards and arms.
Oh, is my mic still okay? Am I good on the mic? Yeah. Sorry.
Yep.
The headset died. We needed weight last year, and so we had the mini fists, right? The baby fists go on. This year we didn't need the weight, but I think the best way to describe it, because we have the flame system and everything, and it's had some hiccups along the way, but ultimately it is when we're taking things seriously, you probably won't see it based on the weight loss as well as the potential damage that we would incur. Like if we get uppercutted and it hits the tank, it looks really bad for us, which is great for a match that we don't care about, or a match that is for a grudge match or something. But right now we're taking it serious. So
Yeah, Tantrum's wearing the serious face. Yeah. Alrighty. How many fists have we lost this season up to this point?
One? No, actually 0. No, because I gave that one to Bunny. That's why it was missing. So 0 at this point.
So if they're smaller, they're harder to lose. Got it.
Lost like during the match, or just completely lost track of? Because some come off during matches. But
During the match.
yeah.
During the match.
And then yeah, we already covered why the hell didn't you make that first punch this last episode? Like-
Yeah. So that first punch, that was after the first big hit from Gigabyte, and that just like tweaked something in our carriage. And it didn't want to work. If you look closely at the footage, you can see it trying, but it was stuck.
Yeah, the generic answer is sliding weapons are hard.
Mhm.
Yeah. Alrighty, so that's the questions I have there.
Oh,
From the
actually, sorry.
Instaland.
In
Go for it.
relation to that, I think why the weapon carriage was stuck. Another question we got was like, what is one of the hardest parts of Tantrum to work on? And I pulled some pictures of the carriage and of the slides and why it is so difficult. So this here shows a picture of the weapon carriage with the 2 bulkheads on either side, and these are the steel rails that we have along either side. And so this part of Tantrum's weapon actually slots into that channel in the rail, and that's what guides it. And then there's a chain attachment on the bottom that spins and then moves the punch back and forth. So there's like a lot of moving parts there that are not free floating, but they are sort of unconstrained to a certain extent. And so if there is a chip that flies into this rail or something that gets wedged in there, it has a tendency to jam, or it can be a little cockeyed as well. And then that also causes it to jam. And so you sort of have to play this delicate game of how wide do we open up our rails such that we don't get jammed, but also that we're well constrained enough that we sort of don't get cockeyed and get ourselves stuck either. And so that's definitely like a delicate balance. And I would argue is one of the harder parts on the robot to service, because like I showed in this picture earlier, in order to get to the weapon carriage, we tried to design some things such that it would be easy to take the weapon carriage out. But then of course things happen. So you can see here earlier on these front hard stops, for instance, we could remove and then slide the weapon carriage out, and then we wouldn't have to take the bulkheads out of the robot in order to sort of service things. But then those were cracking, which is not good. We don't want the weapon to fly out through the front of a robot, obviously. And so we actually ended up having to sort of weld those on. And since these are welded on, this whole carriage can't simply slide out of the front. So that means anytime we want to look at anything related to the weapon, to the punch, to any of those motors, we'd have to take the whole thing out like this to be able to service it. And you can see here, it's quite the beast. So that's like half of Tantrum comes out. We have to unplug all the motors. We have to unplug all the speed controllers. It's definitely quite the hassle. It takes a lot of team effort. And it's, yeah, I would say that's absolutely the hardest thing to service. I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
That
Yeah,
was-
linear
that was
slides are.
great.
Go ahead, Alex.
No. I was just gonna agree that was a great explanation. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say
add
linear
some
slides
more
aren't for.
ibuprofen in there.
Oh yeah, linear slides aren't great for battle bots. That's all I was gonna add.
Great. Anyhow, let's move on to Blip. Everybody wants to know about Blip, the cutest little robot that is. And so, Aaron, just to kick us off, do you think maybe you could tell us how you felt going against Valkyrie and sort of how did the first few bits of the match go? What happened to Valkyrie's weapon and sort of was that your plan?
Yeah, so we're 3-0 and I somehow had a higher seed than Tantrum, but I'm not sure what goes through their heads aside from the fact we were 3-0. They know it's a similar crew behind it, so I think that definitely gave us a fair amount of boost. But seeing the round of 32 fight against Valkyrie, we'd faced him last year, and even with a big hole in the front on Tantrum, we tanked the hits till the spinner died and beat him up for a couple minutes. And then there were some other things that were sad. Like Punch also died in that one for reference. But one of our batteries went sad at the end and we stopped and got knocked out. So we knew how we build robots tends to do well against, as far as the tiny, well-armored brick tends to do well against big horizontals. So seeing Valkyrie was, all right, well, we got this. Blip, if anything, is just a better armor front wedge setup than Tantrum as far as it doesn't have that gap or anything. So I would say in the rock, paper, scissors world for battle bots, Blip is one of the robots Valkyrie wouldn't want to face. We definitely, I'm gonna say, to actually go into the match, got lucky that their speed controller decided to not want to live anymore. I will take that string of luck and run with it as far as I can. But yeah, is learning we're fighting Valkyrie. One, I love they're an awesome crew, Leanne and crew. For fighting against. Fred's also one of the more entertaining people in the world. But so pretty stoked to fight Valkyrie.
Awesome. So some people noticed that our initial flips were not as powerful as our latter flips. Can you talk about what was going on there? And were we ever at max power? Can Blip flip even higher? And, you know, we got 18 flips. That's sort of a big deal. What makes that possible?
Yeah, so the first 3 fights for Blip were very much, I'm going to say, learning curve fights. It's not great turning to the right and doing a wheelie all the time. But we also have the ability to spin it up and down the flywheel whenever we want. And I actually learned of this after the fact. Alex from the Valkyrie team was let me know their plan was get us turning off that we gyro and then they start eating away underneath us. Like, great plan. The flywheel was off until their weapon was dead. So it's like no gyroing going to happen if the flywheel is off. So in this instance, once we knew it was dead, then it's like, okay, turn it on, idle. We're just gonna start doing some little flips, and it definitely plays different than all the other flippers you see because that flywheel can be at any number of speeds. But that very first flip, it was just like all right, get them destabilized, okay, and then get a bigger one lined up, bigger one onto the shelf, and then just like slowly ramp it up. During this fight, we did go to the max setting we had figured out was okay before the season. As far as testing at home, weren't going to push it harder than that as far as what we knew was okay. And I'm beyond stoked that it held out for 3 minutes of flip. Somebody already made a fantastic YouTube edit of just the flips over and over again. So yeah.
Awesome. And so from Instagram, we also have questions from our supporters. The first being, do you have any back armor? And if so, why didn't we use
Yeah, so Blip uncovers the back wheels relative to what we've have ran on Tantrum and other people in the past, previous years. But one, determined we're getting good enough at the driving thing to maybe need a little less armor, and two, Blip's a bit hefty, so I had to cut some weight for as far as exposing the back wheels some. It's all calculated risk in that case. We still have more than half the robot covered in a very, very strong hoop. That's all shock mounted, just like Tantrum. But yeah, so we don't we don't actually have any additional armor to put on the back, because if you get hit in the butt, it's your fault. What are you doing?
Yeah. And then our next question is from our biggest fan, Mike from Witch Doctor, says, "Why you so cute, Aaron?" Well, I think he's talking about Blip. I'm not
No,
gonna.
he's talking about me. He's totally talking about me. Yeah, we're very much, when we were going through the Blip design process, like the robot, as far as what are we gonna do? We took a look as a team going, how do we make this tie into what we had before? And our current team brand was Angry Orange Dude with eyes. It's like, all right, Blip, Tantrum gets a sister. And yep, all right. We've definitely learned there's a fair amount of like instant connection that happens with a human and anything that has eyes. So just lean into that one.
The anthropomorphic gang. Anyhow, next question. Would you fight Ziggo?
You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit.
You cut out.
Would you fight Ziggo?
Yes. So for anybody who doesn't know, Ziggo is Mark Demers and the Lucky Crew's super heavyweight 340-pound thing that dominated for a while. And I believe it's probably at least like 4 times the actual size of Blip. So I feel like we do okay at not getting flipped just by not being on the flipper of theirs. So definitely fight it, Mark. Bring it out of retirement. Let's go.
Awesome. And then the last question we have from our supporters was, what inspired the switch from flipper to puncher a few years ago?
Yeah, so the first ever robo we made was a spring flipper. It was originally intended to be a multi-bot spring flipper, and then we went, let's dial back the expectations a bit because we've never made one of these before. So we took the spring that we had designed for multi-bot and put it on a heavyweight, and then just covered it in more armor than anybody had seen in a long time. But that flipper setup, that particular arrangement was only going to get, I think the spring was good for 3 kilojoules, and for reference, Bronco and Hydra in the 5.5 territory from what I've figured out.
And we spent a while to try to make it more than that.
Yes. So getting the energy we want to get, because Blip's goal is still hit the ceiling. So getting the energy we want into the flipper with the spring setup wasn't going to work, and we didn't have tech developed at that point in time to accomplish what we wanted to with the flipper. So after that, it was, what are some other new takes we can have in robot land that are also, I'm going to say, a bit tamer from the development side in terms of building it and knowing it has a chance of working, which generally tends to mean put a spinning thing on something. And in this case, we put one on a linear rail. But yeah, it was what are our goals, which are still, we want to bring new tech and show that it could be competitive, which is, I'm going to say, it was made for an ambitious start. That was a little rocky for us, but I'd say it's turned out okay so far.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, we kept going with the punch setup.
And that whole time that we were using Tantrum, we had been trying to figure out how to make a flywheel flipper work. And I remember for at least like 2 years at lunch, every day, well, not every day, but all the time at work, Aaron's like, what about this transmission? It's like, no, Aaron, stop it.
Flippers are the coolest.
Yeah.
Yep. So I will amend something that we said earlier. It was Ziggo. We got it wrong. Ziggy is what the robot you were thinking of.
Oh yeah, Ziggo
Well,
of
is
course,
the lightweight
Ziggo.
Spinner.
Ziggo is a 60-pound shell spinner. Yeah,
Correct.
that'd go real high.
Right, by Jonathan Riddler and family.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, Jonathan Ritter. Yeah.
Fight both at the same time.
Yes, we would fight a 60-pound lightweight.
Right. I just had to correct it for the the Wikipedia sleuths that are gonna leave angry comments below. So
Gotcha.
Cool. Well, anyhow, I think what you said, Aaron, about flipper development and punch development is a nice way to end our
Oh,
episode.
Also, I totally apparently made up the statistic of Hydra having 23 flips at any point in time. I don't know where I pulled that from. He is moment.
What
At the end of the-
what is actually? I have no idea. What is the limit?
I don't know, but 23 is not the number.
Okay.
Okay, for the record, Aaron was wrong. Anyhow.
We have it on film, right? He's admitting he's wrong about something.
I want to bring it back to what Aaron was talking about in terms of development. Our motto, our sort of name seems reasonable because we take these really large, creative, ambitious ideas and say, hey, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what we can do, and try to chase after this challenge because it's fun, it's exciting. And we're really grateful that all of you are passionate about similar things, or at least interested enough to listen to us and follow our journey. And it wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, which we're just shouting out here. And we'll also post their names down below. Truly, we couldn't do it without them. So we're super grateful for that. And then also make sure to follow us on Instagram. It seems .reasonable. And then also check out some of our merch. This also helps support us and sort of the projects that we do. And yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in this week. Feel free to leave comments below, follow us. And we're super excited for the round of 16 next week. I think someone mentioned that we will be the only other team other than Son of Waiachi to have had 2 teams in the top 16. And then depending on, hopefully if this week goes well, we'll also have 2 in the top 8, but who knows? And this here is just sort of a final cute picture of all of us together after the round of 16, celebrating our wins. So yeah, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you all again next week.
Thanks.